Don't waste the court's time. He has no lawyer. Let's move on. That's what the prosecutor scoffed as they dragged the old man into the courtroom, handcuffed, shoulders slumped, shirt stained with dried blood. He didn't speak. He didn't protest. He just sat silently at the defense table with no one beside him. Then the heavy double doors creaked open. A man in full military uniform entered, heels clicking crisply against the floor, metals glinting beneath the harsh courtroom lights. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't acknowledge the spectators. He simply walked straight to the defense table, sat down beside the old man, and said with quiet reverence, "Sir, if you believe honor should never fade with age, comment below, stand with honor." Franklin Pierce, 76 years old, had once commanded an entire airborne regiment overseas. 30 years ago, his name appeared in classified mission logs, in commendation letters, in reports buried deep in military archives. Now, it appeared in a very different place, on a court docket. The charges? Obstruction and resisting arrest, outside a city shelter where he had tried to protect a homeless woman. The local news made no mention of his 3 combat commendations. They didn't show his service record, his years training cadets after Vietnam, or speak of the night terrors that still jolted him awake. They didn't mention the shrapnel still lodged in his knee, or how he sometimes volunteered at outreach centers when he could. All they showed was his mugshot, blood drying at the hairline, one eye swollen. Headline, "Vagrant resists officers outside women's shelter." But the truth was far more human and far more heartbreaking. Franklin had stepped between a screaming security guard and a woman clearly in distress. The woman, shaking, eyes darting, unable to speak, was experiencing a PTSD episode. Franklin had seen it before, not in courtrooms or shelters, but in foxholes and burned-out villages, in young soldiers trembling in the dark, in civilians too shell-shocked to run from mortar fire. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't raise his fists. He raised a hand, calm, steady, and spoke in the same tones he'd used on frightened recruits. But when officers arrived, they didn't see a veteran. They saw a problem. They saw an old man in worn clothes, a security guard accusing him of assault. They tased him. They threw him in a squad car. He stumbled when his legs failed. They said he shoved them. He didn't deny it, but no one asked why. 3 days passed. Now he sat alone in court, no family, no lawyer. His public defender had quit that morning, overworked and underpaid. He muttered something about taking the plea deal and rushed out the door. The prosecutor smirked from across the room, confident, polished, organized. "He's been offered 90 days. Maybe he forgot," he said sarcastically. The judge sighed, already weary. "Mr. Pierce, do you understand the charges against you? Do you have counsel?" Franklin didn't flinch. He just stared up at the flag hanging behind the judge's bench. That flag, the only thing in the room he still recognized. "Mr. Pierce," the judge repeated. That's when the doors opened again. The room turned. In stepped a tall man wearing full dress uniform, silver oak leaves on his shoulders, ribbons across his chest. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. He walked directly to the defense table, sat beside Franklin, adjusted his uniform, and whispered just loud enough, "You taught me everything, Sergeant Major. I don't forget." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge blinked. The prosecutor's smirk faltered. "Colonel?" the judge asked, finally finding her voice. "May I ask what you're doing in my courtroom?" "I'm here on behalf of the man who once saved my life," Colonel Raymond Dunn replied. "He's not alone today, or any day going forward." The prosecutor leapt up. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The colonel is not a licensed attorney. He cannot represent the defendant." "I'm not claiming to be his attorney," Dunn said calmly. "I'm here as a character witness and as moral support. Proper legal counsel is already being arranged. I only request a moment to speak." The judge hesitated. Then, Objection overruled. She surprised even herself. Colonel Dunn may proceed. This court is interested in truth, not just procedure. The colonel stood, shoulders squared, voice calm, but resolute. He spoke of a mission from 1983, deep behind enemy lines, a classified operation. When things went wrong, Franklin Pierce, then a sergeant major, led 6 injured men through 11 miles of hostile jungle. Wounded in both leg and shoulder, he carried a young private the entire way to safety. The colonel paused. "That private," he said, "was me." Franklin said nothing. His gaze never left the table, but his posture changed, shoulders straighter now. From a leather folder, the colonel produced letters from the Department of Defense, documents confirming Franklin's decades of service, leadership, and mentorship. "This court sees a criminal," Dunn said, "but I see the man who taught us dignity, who taught us not just how to survive war, but how to survive peace." Even the jury shifted uncomfortably. The gallery was silent. The judge looked at Franklin with new eyes. "Mr. Pierce, why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Franklin finally spoke. His voice was gravel, quiet, unwavering. "I didn't think it mattered anymore." The colonel shook his head. "It always matters." He turned to the prosecutor. "The body cam footage wasn't reviewed. The woman wasn't interviewed. This was about expediency, not justice." "We acted on the evidence provided," the prosecutor replied, but there was less confidence in his voice now. "If you'd looked beyond a man's clothes, you'd have found the rest," the colonel said simply. The atmosphere had shifted. A reporter in the back was already typing furiously. A police officer by the door removed his cap, eyes wide. "Your Honor," the colonel said, "I request a 48-hour continuance. Let us secure legal counsel. Let us bring forward the evidence that should have been reviewed days ago." The judge turned to Franklin. "Mr. Pierce, is it true? Were you defending someone?" He nodded once. "She was having flashbacks. The guard was shouting. I just stepped between them." Something softened in the judge's face. "And you never told the officers?" "They didn't ask," Franklin said. "They saw what they expected to see." The colonel placed a hand on his shoulder. "They've been doing that since he came home." The prosecutor tried one last time. "Regardless of his past service, the law, the judge interrupted, is meant to serve justice, not bury it in technicalities. Colonel, you have 48 hours." The gavel fell. Franklin leaned toward the colonel. "You didn't have to do this, Ray." "I know," the colonel said. "I chose to. Just like you chose to carry me when you didn't have to." Within an hour, the judge's chambers received confirmation after confirmation, from military records, from Veterans Affairs, even a personal call from a brigadier general. Franklin Pierce had never asked for recognition, but he had earned it, many times over. Colonel Dunn wasted no time. He gathered a team of attorneys specializing in veteran defense. He pulled the full shelter security footage. He found the woman at the center of it all. When the court reconvened, it was standing room only. Veterans lined the back wall. Reporters filled every bench. The footage showed Franklin stepping between the woman and the guard, calm, deliberate, protective. His arms extended but not aggressive, his voice steady, his posture non-threatening. He was intervening non-violently, the colonel stated. The guard, when questioned under oath, admitted as much. Franklin never hit him. He had only stood between them. He kept saying, "She's having a flashback, give her space." "I might have overreacted," the guard said reluctantly. Then the woman took the stand, fragile, trembling but firm. "I'm the one he protected," she whispered. "I was having a panic attack. He knew. He helped me breathe again." The courtroom held its breath. The judge reviewed the files one final time, then spoke. "Charges are dropped, with prejudice." She turned to Franklin. "Sergeant Major Franklin Pierce, this court apologizes. For not seeing you. For not asking the right questions. Franklin blinked. I'm just glad someone still sees me. The colonel stood, saluted. They do now, sir. Even the prosecutor approached after the verdict. I was wrong, he said, extending a hand. I should have looked deeper. Franklin shook it. We all miss things sometimes. Outside, cameras swarmed. Franklin looked overwhelmed. You don't have to speak, the colonel whispered. But Franklin adjusted his borrowed tie, stepped forward. I'm not a hero, he said to the microphones. I just did what we're supposed to do. Look out for each other. Later, the shelter's director approached him at a quiet gathering arranged by the colonel. We'd like you to train our staff on trauma response and de-escalation. Would you consider it? For the first time that day, Franklin smiled. I'd be honored. And he meant it. The shelter changed its policies. Within months, it was renamed Pierce House, a sanctuary for trauma survivors. The judge sent a handwritten letter. Thank you for reminding this court that justice requires clarity, not assumption. The police department began mandatory PTSD response training, taught in part by Franklin himself. And the colonel? He returned to base, but visited monthly, often bringing cadets to meet the man who had once saved his life. Franklin never sought fame, never asked for recognition. But now, when he passed the courthouse, officers nodded, out of respect, not protocol, because they knew. The real victory wasn't in the dropped charges. It was in the shift, in hearts, in policies, in the way people looked at one another. 6 months later, Franklin moved into a small office at a veteran center. He counseled others like him, those with invisible wounds. His calendar filled up fast, purpose renewed. You saved more than my life back then, the colonel told him during one visit. You saved my understanding of what strength really is. Franklin just shook his head. We save each other. That's the only war worth winning. And when asked about his sudden spotlight, Franklin would only shrug. Being seen isn't what matters. Seeing others is. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, that may be the greatest legacy of all. If you believe stories like this should never be forgotten, subscribe to Iron Heart Stories, because honor never ages, and neither does truth.